Here's something nobody expected at the 2026 World Cup. European football superstars, some of the most elite athletes on the planet, basically breaking down on the field because it was hot outside. But not like dangerously hot, just American summer hot. The kind of heat that Americans consider totally normal. The kind of heat where you just crack open a cold drink and move on with your day. Except the moment these European players stepped off the plane and started training, something bizarre started happening. Social media exploded with photos of sunburnt European players dousing themselves in water. Norway's national team literally wore ice collars around their necks, like they'd just survived a natural disaster. So what's actually going on here? Why are some of the world's best athletes acting like they've never experienced summer before? And what does this say about the differences between European and American culture? Well, buckle up, because this story is absolutely hilarious, and it's happening right now at the World Cup. The thing that nobody understands, unless they've lived through both climates, European summer and American summer, are not the same thing. Not even close. When you grow up in England or Norway, summer means maybe 70 degrees on a good day. If it hits 75, people start talking about how warm it is. They might even eat lunch outside. That's considered a heat event. Now compare that to Texas in June, or Miami in July, or honestly, most of America right now during the World Cup. We're talking 95 to 105 degrees Fahrenheit, combined with humidity so thick you can practically drink the air. Americans wake up in this heat and think, yeah, that's summer. Let me grab my sunglasses and head to work. Europeans, they act like they've been transported to the surface of the sun. But here's what's actually wild about this. It's not that European heat doesn't exist. Honestly, Spain and Southern Europe get hot too. The difference is that European football culture has always centered around playing in moderate, cool conditions. The World Cup, though, happens in June and July because that's when the American domestic sports season ends. So FIFA scheduled the entire tournament during peak American summer, and suddenly European teams are arriving in conditions they've basically never trained in. They never had to prepare for it before because their entire sport is built around avoiding this exact scenario. So when the photos started dropping of European players absolutely drenched in sweat, looking like they'd just crawled out of a pool, the internet had a field day. But the reactions from the players and the media, that's where it got really good. When the Scotland national team arrived in Boston, the UK media treated the local 77-degree weather like an absolute medical anomaly. Commentators were actively tracking player fatigue, shocked by the insane intensity of playing matches outside of a gloomy British winter. Meanwhile, Americans in the stands were probably wearing shorts and eating ice cream, confused about what all the fuss was about. But the absolute gold moment, Norway's national football team showed up to a training session, looked at the thermometer, and collectively decided they needed ice vests. These are professional athletes who train for a living, and they showed up looking like they were about to perform extreme surgery, not play football. Ronald Koeman, the Netherlands coach, even suggested that other teams were literally changing their entire tactical strategy because of the heat. Rumors swirled through the camps that squads were being picked specifically based on which players could survive the American climate, gambling on slow-paced corners and throw-ins just to save energy. The internet absolutely did not miss this. Americans started pointing out that what European teams were treating like a survival crisis was literally just the first day of summer in Texas.
Look up the clips. The Vikings looking like a bunch of drowned rats on the field, basically naked because they're like, what is...
Scientists started weighing in too, saying extreme heat can reduce athletic performance by 20 to 30%. But Americans were like, yeah, that's why we have air conditioning and iced tea. What made it even funnier was the contrast. You had these elite European athletes, paid millions of dollars, some of them among the best football players in the world, completely overwhelmed by something that American high school football players deal with every August without complaint. The English camp even had to hire specialized sports scientists to run their staff through extreme heat chamber preparation sessions just to survive the Miami humidity. Meanwhile, Spanish and Portuguese teams basically shrugged and said, our players are from the south. We might actually be okay here. And you know what? They were. Teams from warmer climates adapted fine. It was specifically the northern European teams, the ones used to rainy, cold conditions, that completely lost their minds. But here's where it gets interesting. Because the heat is actually a real problem for these players, not just European whining. Climate experts warned before the tournament started that roughly 1 in 4 World Cup matches would be played in dangerously hot conditions. That's legitimately extreme. The research says that above a certain temperature, specifically 82 degrees Fahrenheit, in terms of what they call wet bulb globe temperature, FIFA has introduced mandatory 3-minute hydration breaks because of how serious this is. They're using cooling benches for substitutes. They're measuring temperature with specialized equipment. This isn't just about comfort, it's about actual health and safety. So, yeah, the European teams had a legitimate concern. The American heat is genuinely extreme compared to what they are used to. But the way they freaked out about it, the way they treated standard East Coast summer weather like an emergency, that's where it becomes hilarious. What this whole thing actually reveals is something deeper about the difference between European and American sports culture. European football is built for moderate conditions, controlled conditions, rainy fields and cool nights. The sport evolved that way because of the climate. American sports, though, are built for extremes. Football players suit up in 100-degree Texas heat. Basketball teams play indoor games, but their athletes train in brutal conditions. American athletes are just culturally acclimated to playing in extreme weather. When Europeans came to America expecting European summer conditions, they got a reality check. They realized that American athletes don't just train in this heat. They've built their entire athletic culture around it. And honestly, that's kind of the point of a global World Cup. Eventually, every team has to play in conditions they're not comfortable with. The question is whether they adapt or complain about it. The European teams are doing both, which makes it incredibly entertaining to watch. If you enjoyed watching European culture shock in real time, subscribe, because we cover stories about how different cultures experience the world completely differently. And it's always entertaining when the world's elite run into something they weren't prepared for. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.